At 30, Hannah Barron is already far more than the internet nickname that first made her famous. Long before millions of people watched her catch fish, hunt, or step into the water looking for catfish, she had built a life around the outdoors in Alabama. Fishing was not simply content for her. It was something she had grown up doing, and that background became the foundation for a career that eventually turned her into one of the most recognizable personalities in outdoor social media. Her rise was unusually tied to one specific kind of fishing: noodling, the risky practice of catching catfish with your hands. Hannah's videos made the process look both extreme and strangely approachable. Instead of presenting herself as a distant professional angler, she showed the messy, physical side of outdoor life. Mud, water, oversized fish, and the unpredictable moments that came with them became part of the appeal. One of the biggest turning points came when a video of Hannah catching a catfish began spreading online. According to reporting based on her own account, that early viral attention helped transform what had been a personal passion into a much larger public platform. From there, her audience expanded across social media, where fishing and hunting videos became mixed with glimpses of everyday life. That distinction matters because Hannah's audience did not discover her through a traditional entertainment career. There was no movie role or television character separating the performer from the person. Her popularity was built around the impression that viewers were seeing the real Hannah Barron, and that created an unusual relationship with her audience. When a creator regularly shares parts of her life, viewers can begin to feel that they know the person behind the camera. They recognize her voice, her personality, her family connections, her favorite outdoor activities, and the places that appear repeatedly in her content. But knowing someone's public routine is not the same as knowing what happens when the cameras are off. That boundary became increasingly important as Hannah's personal life attracted attention of its own. Her earlier relationship with Hunter Horton had already become part of the public record. The two were publicly associated and, according to older biographical reporting, became engaged before eventually separating. For longtime followers, that relationship became part of the timeline they used to understand Hannah's life. But after that chapter ended, the audience still had the same access to her fishing trips, hunting adventures, and business projects. What became less clear was what was happening privately. That uncertainty created a space that the internet is particularly good at filling. A change in a social media post can become a theory. A missing appearance can become a rumor. A name appearing beside someone else's name can become a relationship claim. And once enough accounts repeat the same suggestion, repetition can start to look like evidence even when the original source cannot be found. That is where Hannah's story becomes more complicated at 30. The question is not whether people are curious about her personal life. They clearly are. The question is whether that curiosity has produced a confirmed story, or simply a collection of assumptions that have become difficult to separate from fact. And that distinction will matter as the story moves beyond the image of Catfish Girl and into the relationship history that helped fuel the rumors in the first place. For Hannah Barron's audience, her relationship history did not begin with the rumors circulating today. It goes back to a period when her personal life was much easier for followers to understand because one relationship was openly visible. That relationship was with Hunter Horton. Horton became a familiar name to people who followed Hannah during the earlier stages of her rise. Their relationship appeared publicly enough that fans came to associate the two together, and older biographical reports described them as a couple who eventually became engaged. At the time, there was little mystery surrounding the situation. Hannah was building her outdoor career, while viewers could also see the person she was sharing that part of her life with. The relationship became another piece of the story surrounding a creator whose audience was growing rapidly. But the relationship eventually ended. That fact is important because it created a clear dividing line in Hannah's public timeline. Before the breakup, fans had a recognizable picture of her personal life. Afterward, that picture became much less complete. The difference may sound minor, but for a social media personality it can have a major effect. Hannah continued producing the content that had made her famous. There were fishing trips, hunting videos, outdoor challenges, and the same energetic personality that audiences had followed from the beginning. Her career did not stop simply because one part of her private life changed. In fact, her public profile continued expanding. That meant millions of people were still watching Hannah regularly, but they no longer had the same straightforward explanation for what was happening away from her outdoor career. Instead of one publicly recognizable relationship, there was uncertainty. And uncertainty tends to create speculation. The problem is that social media rarely leaves empty space empty. When someone stops showing a partner, followers naturally notice. Some accept that the relationship has ended and move on. Others begin searching for explanations. Then those explanations can spread through comments, fan pages, short-form videos, and celebrity biography websites. Eventually, an assumption can become part of the accepted online narrative even if the original evidence was never particularly strong. That is especially relevant in Hannah's case because her popularity was built on personal access. Viewers were accustomed to seeing pieces of her everyday world. So when one part of that world became private, the absence itself could become something people tried to interpret. But there is an important distinction between what is documented and what people believe they can infer. The documented part is relatively simple. Hannah had a publicly known relationship with Hunter Horton. They were reported to have become engaged, and that relationship later ended. What happened afterward is much less certain. Various reports have attempted to describe Hannah's current relationship status, but they do not all agree. Some describe her as single, while others attach names to her without providing strong first-hand confirmation. That disagreement is precisely why the current rumors need to be handled carefully. A person's social media silence is not a confession. A change in who appears in photographs is not proof of a new relationship. And a website repeating a claim does not automatically make that claim independently verified. For Hannah, the situation became even more complicated because her audience continued to grow while her boundaries around personal information appeared to change. At 30, she has an established career, a recognizable brand, and a massive online audience. But those things do not mean every part of her private life belongs to the public. And that is where the old relationship becomes more than just background information. It explains why some fans believe they can recognize changes in Hannah's personal life. It also explains why later rumors can feel convincing to people who have followed her for years. But feeling convincing and being confirmed are two very different things. The next question, then, is not simply who Hannah may or may not be dating. It is how the latest rumors started, what claims are actually being made, and whether there is any reliable evidence behind them. By the time Hannah Barron reached 30, the conversation around her personal life had changed. The old relationship with Hunter Horton was no longer the center of attention, but the curiosity never disappeared. Instead, it shifted toward a much broader question. Was Hannah seeing someone new? And if so, why wasn't she saying anything publicly? That question created the perfect environment for rumors. The problem is that the current reports do not point to one clear, independently verified story. They point in several directions. Some online biographies describe Hannah as single. Other reports suggest possible relationships without providing a direct statement from Hannah herself. And once those claims begin appearing on multiple websites, it becomes difficult for an ordinary viewer to tell whether they are separate pieces of evidence or simply repetitions of the same original rumor. That distinction is crucial. A search result can look convincing because several pages appear to say the same thing. But if those pages are all relying on one another, the number of articles does not increase the strength of the evidence. It only increases the visibility of the claim. That appears to be part of what has happened around Hannah. Her public profile makes speculation particularly easy. She regularly appears online, but her content is primarily focused on outdoor activities, business, and her public persona. When a creator shares a lot but leaves certain subjects untouched, audiences can start interpreting that silence. And relationship rumors are especially vulnerable to this kind of interpretation. A photograph can be analyzed for who is standing nearby. A comment can be treated as a hidden clue. A person appearing repeatedly in someone's content can suddenly be labeled a romantic partner. None of those things by themselves establishes a relationship. Yet online celebrity culture often treats them as pieces of a puzzle. The situation becomes even more complicated when websites use language that sounds more certain than their evidence actually is. A headline might imply that a relationship has been confirmed, while the article itself contains only speculation or references to unnamed online discussions. That is why the wording matters. There is a major difference between saying Hannah has confirmed something, saying fans believe something, and saying a website has reported something. Those three statements may sound similar when compressed into a headline, but they carry completely different levels of evidence. In Hannah's case, the strongest available information establishes that she is 30 and remains active as a major outdoor creator. It also establishes that her earlier relationship with Hunter Horton ended. What it does not establish is the dramatic personal revelation promised by the original headline. That is the part that needs to be separated from the rumor. There is another reason these stories can become difficult to control. Hannah's audience has followed her for years. Longtime viewers have seen different stages of her life, and that familiarity can create the feeling that they are entitled to understand every change. But public visibility has limits. Hannah can choose what parts of her relationships become content. She can also choose not to discuss them. Neither decision proves anything about what is happening privately. And that leaves the central claim in a very different position. The rumor exists. The curiosity is real. The online discussion is real. But those facts are not the same as confirmation. To find out where the story stands, the investigation has to move away from what anonymous pages and fan speculation are saying and focus on something much simpler. What Hannah Barron herself has actually said and shown publicly. Because if the supposed confirmation cannot be traced back to her, then the headline has already gone further than the evidence. The rumors become much easier to understand once the attention shifts away from what people think Hannah Barron has said and toward what she has actually confirmed herself. That distinction is important because the original headline makes a very specific promise. It does not merely suggest that something may have happened. It says Hannah confirmed that the rumors are true, and that the situation is bad. For a claim that's strong, there should be equally strong evidence. A direct statement, an interview, a verified post, or another reliable first-hand source. The available evidence does not establish that. What can be established is much more ordinary. Hannah has continued to maintain a large public presence while keeping certain parts of her personal life outside the center of her content. Her social media career remains focused heavily on fishing, hunting, outdoor activities, and her growing brand. Those are the areas where she has consistently provided her audience with information. Her relationships are different. The public record includes her earlier relationship with Hunter Horton, but that does not automatically provide an answer to what her relationship status is today. The fact that fans remember the previous relationship can make later changes appear more significant, but it cannot be used as proof of a new one. This is where online speculation often makes the story appear more dramatic than the evidence allows. If a creator stops posting about a particular person, viewers may assume there was a breakup. That assumption might be reasonable, but it remains an assumption unless the people involved confirm it. The same applies when someone new appears around a creator. Proximity is not confirmation. A photograph is not automatically a relationship announcement. And a rumor repeated thousands of times is still a rumor if nobody can trace it back to reliable evidence. For Hannah, the distinction matters because she has never needed a relationship scandal to maintain her audience. Her career already has its own identity. She became famous through outdoor content, built a substantial following around her personality and skills, and continued expanding that audience into business and lifestyle projects. Recent reporting has also highlighted the growth of her Barron Country brand, showing that her professional life at 30 is moving in several directions beyond the fishing videos that first made her famous. That provides a useful reality check. If the strongest documented developments in Hannah's life are her continued career growth and expanding brand, then presenting an unverified relationship rumor as a confirmed crisis would distort the actual story. There is also an important difference between Hannah not addressing a rumor and Hannah confirming it. Silence can mean many things. It can mean the claim is false. It can mean the person does not want to discuss private matters. It can mean the person simply does not consider the rumor important enough to address. Without a direct statement, there is no responsible way to select one explanation and present it as fact. That leaves the central claim in a surprisingly simple position. There is no reliable evidence in the material reviewed that Hannah Barron publicly confirmed the dramatic rumor promised by the original title. That does not mean nothing is happening in her private life. It means the public does not have enough evidence to say what is happening. And that may be the most important distinction in the entire story. At 30, Hannah has reached a point where the audience knows more about her public career than ever before. While some parts of her personal life remain deliberately unclear, the larger her platform becomes, the easier it is for that gap to generate speculation. The next question is therefore more interesting than the rumor itself. While people are concentrating on her relationship status, what is actually changing in Hannah Barron's life at 30? At 30, the most noticeable change in Hannah Barron's life may not be the one the rumor mill keeps talking about. It is the way her public identity has continued to evolve. For years, audiences primarily knew her as the Alabama outdoorswoman who could walk into a muddy creek, reach into the water with her bare hands, and pull out a catfish while millions watched. That image became so closely associated with Hannah that it almost became a character of its own. But behind that familiar identity, something else was happening. Hannah was turning her popularity into a much larger personal brand. By 2026, Barron Country had become an increasingly important part of that evolution. Her content was no longer limited to fishing trips, hunting adventures, or viral noodling moments. Her audience had expanded with her, and the business surrounding her name was expanding as well. Recent reporting highlighted her move into swimwear, including a bikini line connected to the Barron Country brand. That development attracted attention precisely because it represented another side of Hannah that viewers had not always associated with the woman they first discovered in the water. But the important point is what this change does not prove. It does not prove that something dramatic happened in her personal life. It does not confirm the relationship rumors circulating online. And it certainly does not establish the bad revelation promised by the original headline. What it does show is that Hannah has become much more than the viral catfish girl label that first made her famous. Her audience is now large enough to support an entire ecosystem around her name, from outdoor entertainment to merchandise and lifestyle products. Recent reports have placed her Instagram following at roughly 1.8 million, with her YouTube audience approaching the million mark. Those numbers help explain why even relatively ordinary developments in her life can suddenly become major online talking points. When someone reaches that level of visibility, the boundary between public image and private life becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. Fans watch the videos. They notice who appears beside her. They notice who disappears. They compare old photographs with new ones. They interpret captions, absences, changes in appearance, and even business decisions. And eventually, those observations can become theories. The irony is that Hannah's career demonstrates the difference between being highly visible and being completely known. She has shared enormous parts of her life with the public. She has shown people her work, her hobbies, her personality, and her ambitions. But that does not mean viewers automatically have access to every private decision she makes. And that distinction matters more than ever at 30. Because the biggest documented change in Hannah Barron's life right now is not some confirmed scandal hiding behind the rumors. It is the fact that the woman who became famous by showing the world almost everything about her outdoor life has entered a stage where she appears increasingly capable of deciding exactly what the world gets to see. And once that happens, every unanswered question becomes an invitation for somebody else to fill in the blanks. And this is where the entire story finally comes down to one simple distinction: what people are saying versus what can actually be proven. Hannah Barron is 30. Her career continues to grow. Her Barron Country brand has expanded. Her audience remains enormous. Those are the parts of the story that can be documented. But when the conversation shifts toward her current relationship status and the dramatic rumors surrounding it, the evidence becomes much less certain. That difference is easy to miss online. A claim can appear in one article, then another website repeats it. A social media account references the second article, another creator discusses the post, and suddenly the original speculation looks like established fact. After enough repetition, people stop asking where the information came from in the first place. Hannah's situation illustrates exactly why that can be dangerous. There is documented history behind the public interest. Her relationship with Hunter Horton was previously discussed publicly, including reports that the two had been engaged before eventually separating. That history is real enough to explain why fans became interested in her romantic life. But an old relationship does not automatically tell us what is happening years later. And neither does silence. If Hannah does not publicly explain a relationship, that absence cannot honestly be transformed into proof of a breakup, secret marriage, betrayal, pregnancy, or any other dramatic theory circulating online. It simply means that the information has not been publicly established. That may sound less exciting than the original headline, but it is actually the most important finding in the investigation. The available evidence supports Hannah's age, her career, her outdoor work, and her expanding brand. It also supports the fact that people remain intensely interested in her personal life. What it does not establish is the sensational claim that she has publicly confirmed some devastating rumor. And that changes the meaning of the story completely. Instead of a celebrity finally revealing some terrible secret, the more accurate story is about how quickly uncertainty can be converted into certainty on the internet. A viewer sees a missing photograph. Someone else notices a change. A third person creates a theory. Then a website writes about the theory as though it were already meaningful news. Soon, the audience is no longer discussing what Hannah actually said. They are discussing what everyone else claims she said. That is the point where the rumor becomes larger than the evidence. And for a public figure like Hannah, there is another complication. Her entire career was built around openness. She became famous by allowing millions of people into her world. She showed the muddy creeks, the fishing trips, the hunts, the difficult moments, and the excitement of the outdoors. That level of openness can create an unusual psychological expectation among viewers. People begin to feel as though they know the person behind the screen. But familiarity is not the same thing as access. Hannah can share 90% of her public life and still keep the remaining 10% completely private. So when the rumor is placed beside the record, the dramatic conclusion promised by the original title simply does not survive. There is no reliable evidence here that allows speculation to be presented as confirmation. And perhaps that is the most revealing part of the entire story. Because sometimes the truth behind a viral rumor is not a shocking confession. Sometimes it is the realization that there was never enough evidence to make the rumor a fact in the first place. And once that becomes clear, one final question remains. Why do these rumors become so powerful around people like Hannah in the first place? The story of Hannah Barron at 30 ultimately says less about a secret hidden in her private life, and more about what happens when a person becomes deeply familiar to millions of strangers. Hannah built her career by sharing real pieces of herself. Her fishing trips, hunting adventures, noodling videos, humor, personality, and everyday outdoor experiences created the feeling that viewers were watching someone they actually knew. And that feeling can become powerful. When audiences follow a creator for years, they do not simply remember individual videos. They build a mental picture of the person behind them. They remember relationships, friendships, places, milestones, and changes. So when something disappears from that picture, viewers naturally start looking for an explanation. Sometimes there is one. Sometimes there isn't. But the internet rarely leaves an empty space empty for long. A missing detail becomes speculation. Speculation becomes discussion. Discussion becomes a headline. And eventually, the headline can become the version of events that people remember, even when the original evidence never supported it. That is why Hannah's story deserves a little more caution than the sensational headlines surrounding it might suggest. There is nothing wrong with being curious about a public figure. But curiosity does not create evidence. An audience can wonder about someone's relationship status without knowing the answer. Fans can notice changes without knowing why those changes happened. And a celebrity's decision not to explain something does not give the public permission to invent the explanation. That boundary becomes especially important for someone whose career depends on authenticity. Hannah has spent years showing audiences an unusually personal side of her life. Yet being authentic does not mean being completely exposed. A person can be genuine while still maintaining private boundaries. And perhaps that is the biggest change in Hannah Barron's story at 30. The younger version of Hannah became famous because she was willing to step directly into the spotlight. The woman now standing in that spotlight has something much more valuable: the ability to decide what that spotlight actually reveals. So, does the evidence support the dramatic claim that Hannah confirmed the rumors and that something bad happened? Based on the available information examined here, no reliable evidence establishes that conclusion. What we can establish is much more grounded. Hannah turned 30 in July 2026. Her outdoor career continues. Her brand has expanded. Her audience remains enormous. Her past relationships are part of the public record. And her current private life remains an area where online speculation has moved faster than reliable confirmation. That may not be the ending some rumor-driven headlines promised. But it is the more honest one. Because behind every viral celebrity rumor is a real person who still has the right to decide what remains private. And in Hannah Barron's case, perhaps the most important lesson is not what the internet thinks it knows about her. It is how little the internet can actually know when the evidence stops. So before believing the next dramatic headline about Hannah, there is one simple question worth asking. Did Hannah actually say it? Or did somebody simply say that she did? That question may be the difference between a story and a rumor.